Hey everyone, good evening. Welcome along. Thanks so much for giving up some of your time on this Wednesday evening on Budget Day when we've found out what the Chancellor has got in store for us. Really critical for our industry. So great to have you along. As you can see, I'm joined by two friends who are along here. So first of all, let me just introduce Lisa. Hi Lisa, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Nice to
Jolly
be
good.
here.
Excellent. Nice to have you along. Lisa is from one of our all our clubs are great, of course, but Lisa's from Homer Park, which is one of our biggest clubs, and does a great job there, working in the gym and looking after all our customers. And we're here to chat to someone who's really influenced us over the past couple of months. We're going to welcome along Dr. Col Robertson. Dr. Col, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me along to chat. Really appreciate it.
No, it's great to have you here. And yeah, now your job title, I think it's wonderful. So let me tell you about Dr. Cole for those of you that are watching and don't know him. Dr. Cole is a doctor of physiology. He's an exercise and nutrition scientist. He's a clinical researcher. He's a high performance coach, and he's a gym owner. Now let me tell you, I'm just a gym owner, and I'm don't know where I find the hours to get that job done. So how you fit all those other roles in, Carl, I don't know, but I have huge admiration. So yeah, sounds like you're grateful when your weekend arrives, I guess.
The weekend, I remember that. We used to have them in the 80s, didn't we? They
Yeah,
were great.
absolutely.
I remember them fondly. Yeah, don't be fooled. Really, that's I'm one of those people that because my kind of role is so multifaceted, people will say, it's harder for my kids actually when other kids say, "What does your dad do?" When people say to me, "What is it you do?" you kind of go, "Well, it's all this really." So then when it came to describing that to other people, I thought I'd best just give the headlines of the key things to do. And so yeah, it's one big role that just covers a lot of different dimensions, I guess.
Excellent. Well, we're going to dive into some of that role of what you do this evening because this evening's talk is all about understanding how exercise can help us and play a part in kind of building our resilience and our immunity to be able to cope with all sorts of viruses, but particularly obviously and really relevantly for right now with COVID-19. So that's the sort of the theme of this evening. And clearly, as I mentioned at the start, you've had a great influence on us and our business because of the courses that you're currently running across the UK, across a number of health clubs. But certainly our group have signed up to instruct our instructors on how they can better support our members when we eventually get to reopen in terms of how they build up their immunity and build their resistance to it. So that's what we're really going to be talking about tonight. I should just say before we get into that conversation that whether you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, this is going out not only across the Shrewsbury Club and Homer Park Facebook sites, but across all of the Mosaic sites on social media that we have. A number of people joining us. If you want to be like Claire and Amanda have already said good evening to us, and it's great to see you, then we can see there's lots of other people online as well. So just go in your comments and put some comments in there. If you've got a question that you want to ask, then we'll try and take as many of those as we go through the conversation. So feel free to put those questions in there, and we'll try and ping them across to Dr. Cole. But let's just start then, maybe Cole, if we can. So how did you sort of first get involved in kind of looking into COVID-19, researching it, and deciding to sort of come up with a program that you've done? How did this all come about?
COVID-19 appeared on the radar, on the horizon, and because of the nature of what it is and what we knew about it even back then, it kind of naturally came in my direction because a number of my medical colleagues who are actually outside the UK, they'd started to reach out. They were already dealing with the kind of cold face of it. They were, weeks ahead of us here in the UK, and they were starting to say, look, they were reaching out to me saying, Col, we've got people here who need rehabilitating before we can discharge them, and it's creating a backlog. We're actually, one of my colleagues in particular, the hospital they were at, is they were acquiring other departments to get beds in as a holding ground, because they're saying these people, they're no longer symptomatic and they're no longer on ITU, but the level of post-viral deconditioning is such that we can't just let them go home. So So really, that's how it landed directly on my lap, was other people reaching out and saying, Colin, what can we do with regards to acute rehabilitation to start to get these people up and moving before we send them home? So that was the first, that, you know, because I was much like a lot of people in the UK. I was looking at what was getting broadcast on the media, but because of the work I do that's often in line with the World Health Organization, I was direct to I was more closely located to the direct source of information that was coming out. So I realized we had a big problem coming our way. And anyone who I spoke to, who at that time, this is late Jan, February, who was saying it's just a flu, it's just a cold, I was saying it's really not. It's really not. And things are going to change. So, you know, brace yourself. And then why that led into Cause and putting a program together was because I was already working with Mel Spooner, who's not here tonight to chat, but, you know, Mel had approached me in the back end of, no, it was mid 2019. And Mel and I, we go back a way. We'd both worked on some similar projects with some big kind of global brands, clothing industry stuff, and we'd linked up on a few ideas. And Mel is really passionate about the PT, the fitness space, and education. And for a long time, she had this idea that she wanted to make the content at a level 3 and a level 4 really draw parallel to what undergraduate sports science students and those kind of cohorts were getting. And she was aware that, you know, our profession is very front facing, is dealing with the masses, and
sure,
just needed more info, you know, to make them better skilled and give them really what they were looking for. So Mel had been hitting me up and saying, what about this? Can you do that? What about this content? And then it was I just got back from the States, so it was October 2019. She said to me, look, Col, I keep coming to you with all these questions. Will you join me on this? I'm going to put together an education platform, you know, really want to work and really make an impression on the industry. So we'd started to work together on that, and given my background, we'd already started to look at more diverse populations. So we wanted to put components in that were about working with people with comorbidities, cancer, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, COPD. So we'd started to put all this kind of structure in place. And then we get into 2020, and obviously COVID is coming more, and it's appearing more on my daily day kind of feature. And then it was, I have to say, again, it was Mel. Mel said, I think there's an opportunity here, Col, for us to respond and help the industry, because we were having conversations and we were already saying there's going to be lockdown, there's going to be closure. This is going to have ramifications. So when the lockdown came, Mel was really quick. She said, right, let's start to put it together. We need to position the industry in the UK and globally so that it's ready to cope with these people and be able to support them as best as we possibly can. And you know, Mel, if you cut her open, you know, she lives and breathes this as much as I do, but you know, she's really, it is a campaign for Mel, and so she was really about getting the most up-to-date, accurate information captured, communicated easily so that people can put it straight into practice, and bringing in as many good people as we can to furnish that program. So that in a nutshell, that was a huge nutshell, is kind of where it came from and where it's at, yeah.
Well, it's great. Well, across all our clubs, we're one of the early adopters, I think, in terms of getting people on the course. And Lisa's certainly one of the ones to first graduated through that. I'm just going to ask Lisa a question, but I just need to resolve. There's a debate going on with a couple of Shrewsbury members about whether this is really Dave Courtine or not. So let me just answer that question for Jill and Christine. Yeah, yes, this is actually Dave Courtine, and it's great to have both of you along. But Lisa, just explain a little bit to everyone that's here. I mean, you've gone through this, and you've got through this as quick as a number of our staff. You're one of the first to get through. There's 3 courses in total, and you've done 2 of them, the rebuild and the rebound one. Just explain for people a little bit about what you think the value is going to be, that when we do reopen on April the 12th, what you're going to be able to bring extra to our members. Just what have you learned from what you've done so far?
It's just really expertise and knowledge and confidence in what we're saying and what we're doing with, and understanding you know,
Right.
what, being able to listen to them and understand what they're going through, and being able to put that knowledge into being able to help them.
Because COVID, Col, is a really it's a strange virus, isn't it? It's not actually the virus itself that's the problem, but it's the impact it has on the other parts of the body, isn't it? Do you want to just explain that? Because I certainly, when I've been doing the course as well, it's been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's fascinated me that actually COVID itself is not the real problem. It's what it does to our systems, isn't it? You can explain that far more eloquently than me.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Dave. First of all, Lisa, that's Lisa's comments there. That's the perfect kind of scenario. What we recognise that the girls and guys out there are already skilled, and what we wanted to give them was a confidence to understand the nature of what's going on, the language of it, some kind of structure, so that you had confidence. That's the key thing. Confidence comes from understanding. So that was a key element of the course. And so where that comes from, and really regards to your comment there, Dave, is, COVID-19, I have to be really careful how I describe this, because you can often get misquoted. COVID-19 as a virus, on the one hand, is quite exceptional. And, when you look at what it does and how it functions, there's a level of it that's just, it's fascinating, really. If you're a physiologist like myself, there's a fascination with it, because it's just to simply sum up. So COVID-19 as a virus gets onto the cell. So we know it's largely respiratory, gets onto the cell, is really stealthy, is able to go largely undetected in its initial passive state, sits on the cell, and cunningly goes about its business. And this is how it catches the immune system off guard. So it sends a message into the cell to replicate. And once it's gained a sufficient critical mass of its own numbers, it then sends a code to destroy the cell. And this happens en masse. And the immune system's caught off guard. And there's a lot of cellular trauma going on, and the immune system over-responds, goes in and starts taking out even more tissue. So there's this huge, this creates a cytokine storm. There's this huge amount of damage that happens in the wake of the first response. And there's an importance to this, because this is where people who had already got kind of immune issues are really vulnerable. This is why factors of overweight, obesity, cancer, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular, respiratory illnesses and diseases really make a person vulnerable, because that system's already under stress. And then COVID comes in a very stealth-like way, triggers this massive immune response. This aggressive over response causes more damage. And that's why we say COVID itself doesn't cause any deaths. It's the consequence of COVID. So it can, people are having heart attacks, people are having strokes, people are getting pneumonia. This is what's leading to the mortalities, but it's very much it's accelerated by the COVID. So COVID itself it's a canny virus, and like any virus, it morphs. And I have to say, because this is getting a lot of headline news, no virus in history has had the amount of headline pages and inches that COVID had. All viruses mutate and morph. This is the natural behavior of a virus. That's what makes them so difficult. And that's exactly what we've seen this one do. And in the first instance where it became a really measurable change was that the virus itself became more sticky, and there was more of it present. So this meant that it was far more communicable. It was easier to spread from an infection point of view. And once it was present, it had a firmer grip and would therefore go about its business all more assuredly. So this is how it impacts and starts to affect the system. And then it's looking at those catalogue of consequences of what actually happens to the system because COVID has been there. In most instances, the second wave response of the immune system starts to take care of things. And this is where we start to get that B cell and that T cell modification and classification build up. And then they start to actually themselves play a bit of a canny game, and you get these immune cells that themselves hide away, and they wait until they see those identifiable markers, which we now people commonly refer to as the spike protein. And when they see that, they act earlier and stop such an aggressive response. The problem we've got with the mortalities is that, what's brought on doesn't allow an individual to get to that stage. Thankfully, for most people, they'll be symptomatic and they might feel a bit rough afterwards, but then they'll start to pick themselves up. But the main concern, certainly from my perspective in the area that I work in, and that's going to impact on all of us across the fitness industry, is this growing population of people that are now defined as being long COVID and long haulers. And that's a group that is growing to become quite substantial.
Sure. And we've very kindly, you've agreed to come back in 3 weeks, and we're gonna do a whole session and talk for an hour about that very thing, because we recognize that some of our members have been affected, that potentially there are people out there that are really struggling with this across all age groups, and we really want to get some help out there. So in 3 weeks we're gonna be back here, and we're going to be talking precisely about long COVID. I want to just make this one a bit more general, but just flag that up so people know. So there's been a lot of stuff in the press about gyms potentially being super spreaders, to quote the First Minister of Wales, and I think obviously we've largely disproved that over the period of time between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, when we were able to measure the impact and the number of people that caught it there. But I think what we've really tried to do across the industry is position that exercise is part of the solution to beating COVID rather than part of the problem. And obviously you've got this incredible insight that you've spent. So just explain again to our members and people that are just tuning in why exercise can help in terms of making building up our immunity and helping in terms of battling COVID.
Yeah, I mean, we Dave, Lisa, we could talk all night. Exercise is the key component to the 3 parts, the 3 pillars of health are nutrition, physical activity, and exercise. And you won't keep the temple up if you remove any of those pillars. And it's not a question of will I develop some kind of health issue without them. It's about when will you develop it. I say this a lot, but I'm going to do it again now. We climbed out of the sea, crawled out 20 million years ago. 6 million years ago, we started to really shape up into what we are now. 315,000 years, we became Homo sapien. We are a migratory species. We are designed to move. And the past 120 years of sedentary activity has started to manifest symptoms left, right, and center that are so common, we've normalized them. In the past 45 years, despite the advance of medicine, what we've seen is an increased profile of sickness, chronic sickness and disease. And it has nothing to do with detection. It has everything to do with epidemiology, more people getting sick. Right at the heart of that, we have the power of exercise. There is no pill that can do what exercise can do. And the vaccine doesn't do it either, by the way. The vaccine's great, and I'm pro-vaccine, but the vaccine isn't going to rehabilitate people. It's not going to fix the COVID situation. And it's a way to develop an antibody over this specific thing. But you know what the best thing to do is to have a really good, normally functioning immune system in the first place. When we exercise, particularly when we exercise at moderate and intermediately increased intensity of activity periods of time, our T cell production is prolific. Our body recognizes this. Exercise as a stimulus, as a stress. The physiological response to that is to adapt and supercompensate. We get that everything from a muscular point of view, but we get that from a systemic point of view. So not only does it bring about gross architectural changes with regards to muscle tone and musculature and our skeletal system and nervous system, but our immune system is highly sensitive to it. But we've got to make sure that we pitch exercise for the vast majority of people towards health and fitness, and not go down that route where the two separate and diverge and we start to go all out for fitness. I work with girls and guys whose career are based in elite sport. They're a tiny percentage of the population. The potential rewards are great, and so then it kind of legitimizes the risk. Everybody else should be prioritizing the health gains that can be had from exercise, and then looking at how fitness stands on top of that foundation. But everything from how you're, I don't like this word, but just bear with me, with regards to your metabolic, activity hinges off the level at which you participate physically engaging in the world and with regards to your exercise. Your immune system response is a direct reflection of your exercise, your physical activity, and your dietary behaviors. Your sleep behaviors, we could go all the way through every single book of physiology. When it comes to rehabilitation, early mobilization predicts better treatment outcomes, regardless of what the condition is. If you're on ITU, we're looking at strategies as how we can keep you moving. Immobilization is the worst thing for a human. Exercise is central and key. And the problem we've got is that our industry, the fitness industry, is the perfect vehicle to provide that for people. But the kind of inherent curse is that some people have got it into their mind that it's almost a hobby. It's not a hobby. It's not a hobby. It can be your hobby as well, but it's not a hobby. It's about being human. It's about looking after yourself, daily servicing, maintenance, and investing in yourself. That's what the fitness industry is there for. It's not a hobby. Five-a-side might be a hobby, but actually doing your exercise and looking after yourself is essential. It's vital. So we're a part of the solution in two ways. One, preventatively. We can't prevent someone being infected, but we can definitely prevent the worst possible types and severity of symptoms. 100% we can do that. And when it comes to recovery from someone who's had it, exercise is the key component to get you back your physical independence, confidence, and to restore the immune system.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And I think just explain for us a little bit more what you said a great phrase there about exercise is important for our health rather than for fitness. And I know exactly what you mean, but I think it'd be really useful just to sort of explain that. We've got so many diverse members across a broad age band with all sorts of different exercise activities that they enjoy. But just in terms of that point, just sort of unpack that a little bit for us, if you could, Col, that would be great.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with fitness, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be fit. I'm all for it. Even at my age, I have a go, believe me.
But you've just been for a run just before we came online.
Yeah, that's like me daily. That I don't even know if that counts anymore. Fitness, there's nothing wrong with fitness. But what we've got to bear in mind is that there is a point all too often, and I see this more across the general population than the elite population, because the elite population is so well managed. It's hard now. I've been in this game a long time. There used to be a massive variance, but now the backroom staff and the support teams around elite athletes and professional athletes is really good. So they get a lot of support and monitoring, and they get reined in, and there's people to really plan and nurture them. When people are doing it for themselves, they just don't have that support system. And too often, what I see is that the people who are really going out for some fitness gains, they leave too much of a gap between where their fitness is reaching and where their health is. And then they start to exhibit all the same symptoms as people who don't do anything. So metabolically, we see the same metabolic rates. We see the same level. In fact, we see enhanced levels of stress hormones present. We see greater amounts of muscle breakdown. We start to see sleep issues. They start to be more susceptible to colds, flus. They start to, it really starts to undermine their health because it's such a huge, stress at an upper end. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It can be managed effectively, but it takes managing. And so for what I encourage everyone is that, focus on that foundation, and however high you want your fitness to reach, make sure you bring that foundation with you so you never fall too far, so that you're fit and well, so that you stay close proximity to those things that matter. Because without being whimsical, and I really don't want to be like kind of naff when I say this, but at the end of the day, for 99.999% of us, our exercise exploits are just to bring a bit of joy to our life and to enhance the experience and to give us something back and to make us cope better with everything else. So when we spend ourselves too much in the direction of fitness, we're undermining the main cause and the main benefit. And then that's where the wheels come off. And that's where people start to pick up naff injuries. They start to go through cycles of illness, 2 or 3 colds a year, susceptible to the flu. And actually all of that should be the exact opposite if you're really investing in your health through your exercise behavior. So it's kind of getting people back in line with that, really, and thinking on those terms.
No, it's good, and that kind of leads in actually to one of the questions that's come in while we've been chatting. Harriet's sort of talking about the fact that, as with many gyms across our group, we've been posting up online workouts so that people can carry on exercising and have some help from us whilst we're in lockdown and whilst we're shut. But what Harriet wants to know is what else can she do to kind of improve and work on our fitness before we all get to reopen on the 12th of April. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, fitness is specific, isn't it, Harriet? So it depends on the context of what you mean, whether you're talking about strength, endurance, speed. So there's real specific components of what you mean by fitness. And also, I always get a bit concerned, and we've got coaches at our gym, and I do worry sometimes. It's the same with the members, that they feel like they have to be fit to be there. We've all had a huge disruption. Mm-hmm. Personally and professionally, with regards to our exercise behavior, compliance, because of our lack of not being able to access these places. Don't put any pressure on yourself. To me, it's a case of keep yourself well so that when the doors reopen, you can take full advantage of being back in the optimal environment to get fit again and focus on whichever specific aspect of it is that you're doing. But in the meantime, if you want to do a little bit of prep work, start to think for yourself and for your clients, what's the end game? So what is it? Where would you like to be in 6 months' time, once in 12 months' time? And then start to lay the foundations of that. So if it's something to do, let's say it is strength, well, even outside of the gym, we can work on that to some limited capacity, can't we? With regards to what kit we might have available or body weight kind of stuff. We can start to look at that structural loading, time on task, and we can start to manipulate that a little bit and start to increase the demand. Likewise, if you're going to start to work on some speed reactivity work, start to do that, but build it up. Because remember, the process itself is that we want to develop the structure so that it's tendon, ligament, muscle, and that it's not just muscle. And more often than not, by really being too quick about those early stage things, we forget the tendon, ligament part. And guess what? That's where most of the NAF injuries creep in, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So in the meantime, I would start to do a load of really good work around that. Some really in your garden and some outdoor space, some low-level reactivity stuff. But I'd say this to everyone and say to the members, don't feel like you need to be fit to come back. When we get back, let's all start getting fit and healthier again together.
And I think that's where the instructors come in, and that's where it's been useful for all of us to be gone through the courses that have been running, is that it's about helping achieve those goals. And I love the point you said earlier about, let's start with the end in mind. So where do we actually want to work towards and start with that? Lisa, I want to bring you in again here, because so just explain for those people that again are listening and the members at home. So describe what you've been kind of doing. So how we're locked down, so we can't do anything face to face, but just talk a bit about how you've picked up and learned through the course and kind of what the assessment was like. Because actually I've got my test in a couple of weeks, by the way, so you can let me know what I've got coming. So yeah, just explain to those how the kind of this course has worked from your perspective as someone who's been learning.
Okay, so it's all been online, and lots of online videos with Dr Col to watch, but also lots of other people as well. And there's just lots to take on board, lots to learn.
Yeah, I think the useful thing has been the case studies, hasn't it? There's been lots of case studies, and so that's been really helpful for me.
In both the rebuild and the rebound, that was really interesting. As for the test, I'm not going to give you the answers.
At least not on air, anyway.
I was going to say, don't ask the questions either.
It's a multiple choice test that goes back over all that you've learned on the rebuild course. Some of it is knowledge that you would have anyway. But yeah, it's so much content in it.
And I think that's really, yeah, I mean, to give some idea, I think it's around about 70 hours worth of stuff which was time that I've spent to go through it so far, which has been great. And I think it's really important from a member's perspective to know that there is an assessment at the end with quite a high bar that we need to get over in terms of the assessment. I think that's really important.
Needed to get something like that.
Yeah. So yes, I think that's great. And Cole, just talk to us. There's 3 courses, as Lisa mentioned there. There's the rebuild, there's the rebound, and the fortitude. So just again explain what those things cover, so that again those members watching have an understanding about what it is that we've kind of learned so far about COVID and exercise.
Yeah. So right from the start, we started to consider really in what way is this going to affect people? What are the critical populations to be considered? So the obvious one was going to be people who've been affected by COVID. So that was where rebuild came into it. So we built the rebuild program, which is very specifically within the context of COVID-19, explaining what it is. And do bear in mind, we update content every month, so that as new data and new research emerges, we make sure that that's catered for within the program. So rebuild was all about how to rebuild ourselves and our clients in the wake of COVID-19. And to touch on your point there with regards to the amount of content, we wanted it to function like a resource. So there is an assessment, and that's really, and hopefully Lisa will agree, it's to really determine your contextual understanding. It's not about right and wrong answers. It's so that you feel confident again. If you've passed it, and we've said this to a lot of graduates of it, we've said, if you've passed that test, you've already proven you have the contextual understanding to apply this. So be confident. And we set the bar high for that reason, Dave, so that people, once you've got it, you've got the confidence to go with it. So that was rebuild, was all about the here and now. I'll just jump across a little bit, because fortitude was far more in line with our initial attention. We wanted to start to upskill people in regards to their understanding of the common chronic diseases and how that impacts on people and the things that we need to be mindful of. And as anyone who knows me at all will know, that I've been a bit outspoken and skeptical in the past of some of what we provide on those terms, because I think much of the education to date has terrified coaches and PTs from not wanting to work with those populations. And so what I want to do is put something in place that empowers them, and again, gives them the confidence to work with those populations, and also gives them the keenness to do so, to realize you can work with people who've had cancer, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and you can be life-changing. Never mind on, what you might call our standard coaching, getting someone to do a PB and all the rest of it. This is life-changing stuff. It's an endlessly rewarding population of people to work with. And our industry, again, has the infrastructure. We're within the community. These are people in our society and community, so we should be working with them. So that's really what that was about. And then rebound was, I guess, maybe I say this a little bit reluctantly, the more what we might call average common gym goer, is someone whose life has been disrupted because of COVID-19. So because of lockdowns, they've not been able to go to the gym and train the way they'd normally train. They may or may not have had a brush with COVID-19, but really this is about this notion of getting back to fitness, realigning their compass, their expectations on what that means, so that actually they can look down the road and aim to get fitter and healthier than they ever have before. So rebound takes a lot from my 20 odd years plus working in high performance and elite sport. And that's why, and Lisa, you'll say there's a lot of other contributions in that program as well from people from that background. So I'm really proud of Rebound, because we've got some great people in. Believe me, there's some great people who talk on that. The caliber of the other speakers in Rebound is exceptional. And it's to cover those 3 needs. So directly had COVID-19, interrupted because of the world being on shutdown, and those people who've existed before this. They were those growing numbers of population who've been crying out for help and support for 45 years, how we can work with them better.
Do you think that this pandemic, this experience we've all gone through, is going to make more people want to exercise, and how best can we support those people if they do?
Yeah, yes, and all the evidence supports that. So whenever there's been kind of consensus and opinion polls taken, people are far more switched on, far more open to ideas about how they can better manage their own health situation and really what exercise can do for them. So I think there's a real opportunity to capture that attention. At the same time, the other part of the narrative that we're picking up on is this notion of, I don't need the gym. You know, I've started to do exercise at home and I feel like I'm doing okay, and I go for a run. So there's really this two sides to it. And my approach to this right down the middle is that the world needs the fitness centers and fitness experts like never before, because left to your own devices, one, your motivation will run out. Motivation is the most fraudulent emotion in the world. That'll run out. Promise you, that will be gone. You know, we're all in the industry. We see motivation brimming on, New Year's Eve, and it's amazing. And then they've all disappeared by the second week of February, and the statistics stay the same, and they have been in my entire professional career. So that's going to go. And also what we do, and I think sometimes PTs and coaches forget this about themselves. You're highly skilled practitioners. You're dealing with one of the most complex systems known to humans, which is the human. And being able to plan, program effectively, to be coached live, to be corrected, means you can avoid all the nonsense. You can avoid the risk of naff injuries, and you can continually progress. It can remain to be inspiring, and it can give you something back every single day. More often than not, when people attempt it on their own, they burn out and crash out. The low skill, low compliance, low motivation, and we provide all of that in buckets. We can give people a successful experience from the start. We can plot it for life, and also keep it evolving and changing. That's what our industry does and does best. So right now, the time is there, the opportunity is there, but I keep saying this to every PT, coach, gym operator I speak to. You've got to speak up. You've got to control the narrative. You've got to be saying to the people in your community, this is what we do. We are here for you. We have no expectation. We want you to tell us what you need, and we're going to help you to get there. We don't want you to look a certain size. We don't want you to do this. That's none of our business. You tell us what you would like, and we will get you there the most effective route possible. That's what we do. Sorry,
I was going to say, I think that's a really good point. And one of the things that I've got from the training that we've gone through with your courses, etc., is this whole matching of keep everything simple, but actually use the technology that's available. So I know there's some of the fitness testing that you've put on the course, which has been fascinating, which I think is really relevant in terms of when people are coming back to exercise, having not exercised for a long period of time, that actually we can embrace the heart rate monitors, the wearable technology, but we can actually do a really simple test like the Rockport test, which is a walk test, or we can do it on a treadmill, or we can adapt it to a number of different bits of basic equipment, and that makes it so simple in order to benchmark and to provide advice. So aside from the social benefits of working out in a gym environment, you've got this whole approach now where we can, yes, embrace the technology, but actually don't throw away the real simplicity of some of the more basic tests and that's 30 years ago, Col, when I did my anatomy and physiology. So those tests are still as relevant, aren't they?
They absolutely are. And, it's as old as the hills, they're saying, if you're not assessing, you're guessing. And best practice is to take a snapshot of where the individual is at, count it, so that then you can effectively and objectively monitor that and monitor progression, because we're not trying to be fraudulent. We're not selling snake oil. We really want to be able to measure that individual's progression so that we can change and we can do something about it. And the reason why the Rockport sticks around is because it's really simple, but it's quite accurate, and also it lends itself to multiple environments. Part of the reason why I chose it for our course is because to this day, it's a go-to option within acute clinical settings all over the world. To this day, it's still used in cardiac rehab, COPD, It's used in some instances of cancer. It's used as a functional capacity test. And that's important because it's important that we're speaking the same language as the clinicians, so that if somebody comes from that environment, there is a phase that they pass through where we take them from and through that, so that once they've been working with us for, let's say, 4, 5, or 6 months, we've retained that. So we're speaking the same language, we're monitoring, we're assessing the same way. Our exercise program and our structure and our coaching reflect that. But once we get to a point where we can say, we're no longer now working under that banner, now it's all about where would you like to go next? Well, then you can bring in that next wave of testing, and that's where wearable tech comes into its own, or you might want to up the ante and start to look at more performance-orientated tests. But that said, you know, if you've got if you've got a stopwatch and you've got a couple of cones and a marking tape, you can run a meaningful fitness assessment anywhere, on a field, on the gym floor, in someone's garden. And that's the important thing about this, is that it's about doing things that are going to reach people where they're at, so that you've got time to build in and build confidence. And also, a lot of our cause coaches are now, they've been working with clients for months and they're doing it remotely. And something like those tests, they're safe to administer from a distance. And I think we need to embrace more of these things. But you know, the coach hasn't lost its part because of wearable tech. In fact, wearable tech has made the vitalness, the importance of the coach even more pressing, because, you know, I won't mention the brand, but I'm a keen cyclist and runner and swimmer, and I've got a very, very good watch, very, very good watch. And if I didn't know better, it would be the most demoralizing bit of kit I could own, because I'll go for a run and it'll say unproductive. You know, that was done. Essentially, it said, I don't know why you bother, Col. You might as well stay in tonight. I did run at the weekend. I ran 16 mile, and I got some PBs in there. I went at a fair old steady pace. I was actually out there to enjoy it, so I wasn't pushing. But had a great run. Heart rate was low throughout. Managed a good pace, and then I pressed record, so it went up to my Strava account and all the rest of it. And I was like, yeah, rubbish. That was a waste of time. So, but, you know, that's where the coach is able to look and work with the individual and go, no, let's look at what data we can derive from that session. I mean, even just the fact that of, you know, the structural loading, the conditioning impact of going for a longer distance run. And these watches, they can't account for any of that kind of stuff. They're limited. But what they're brilliant at is giving us coaches a greater insight to what's going on, so that we can better communicate with our clients.
It's the interpretation, isn't it? I mean, it's you can have as much data as you want, but I think that's where, you know, I get excited for our instructors, and that's why we've invested as much as we can into training our staff, is to say, look, we have these tools. It's so important that you're actually able to use those tools and put them into practice. And so, yeah, that's where we invest time with across our teams, across all our sites, is to make sure that they understand how to take that information and work with it. And you know, the way that we can program now, we can program remotely. You know, when I was working on the gym floor when we first started with Mosaic, it was a pen and a clipboard and a piece of paper, and you were writing courses. So I'd love to be working with some of the stuff there, but it's about having that technology and then using it and providing the right advice. I'm going to pick up on something Caroline's messaged in, and so thank you. There's some lovely comments on there, Caroline, which is great. A number of other people made great comments, which we really appreciate. But she's talking about she can't wait to get from full-time work to home, and kind of sees the club as a form of escape, which is wonderful. That's kind of how we would try to do that. And she mentions about, you know, getting back in there to hopefully deal with the weight gain, and that kind of prompted me to come on something else that, you know, I've learned from the course, and something else that I'm kind of aware of, is that exercise is one part of this, but nutrition is another. I listened to I did part of my training on a Saturday night. All my rest of my family were wanting to watch Mamma Mia, so I decided I'd bail out, and I came and listened to you instead, and one of your training. And it was I did it with my glass of wine and my bar of chocolate. It is my normal Saturday night treat, and I found out that the course was on nutrition. So you kind of I only ate half the bar of chocolate as a result of kind of listening to you. But it was a great talk about nutrition. Just again, for those guys that are listening, explain why nutrition is as big a part about this whole thing as exercise.
I'm going to start with a cliche, Dave, which is that, some cliches stick around because they're actually accurate. You are what you eat. Simple as. You are only as good and as well as the quality of the nutrition that you engage with on a daily basis. And
that does make me a bar of chocolate and a large bottle of wine then, actually, if that's if you are what you eat.
It's cap fit. It's a cap fit, Dave. We are what we eat. And just to really set this up right from the start with the right tone, life is short. You should never say that there are things that you can't ever have, but you've just got to get the balance right. And the balance has to be tipped far more towards those foods that are going to enhance your wellness, your health, than the ones that we've kind of, it depends on what kind of language you want to use. Have we been, we've been indoctrinated to think of as treats and rewards. I find it really strange. I feel like an outsider looking in sometimes. You just got to get the balance right. And if more of what you eat is contributing positively to who you are and what you are and how you are, then great. And, some guys like to use the 80-20 rule. 80% of what you do is good, then, 20%. And that's okay. And yeah, I'd agree to that. I'd agree to that. But you've really got to make sure that you're making the best possible choices you can within your budget, within what's available to you in that 80%. And there's a ton of stuff that we do know clearly about nutrition now with regards to the epigenetic response. So we know the key role that daily antioxidants make. So looking at foods that are high in flavonols and antioxidants. So we want to be making sure we're getting good sources of food groups like blueberries, raspberries, these things that are going to contribute positively. I don't like the term superfood, just things that have got higher nutrient content. We know that our dark leafy greens, we know that, our PUFAs, our polyunsaturated fatty acids, our fatty fish. We know that all of this is positively contributing towards it. We know that complex carbs are good on multiple levels, but we can't have, we shouldn't be, the average person in the UK is eating an insane amount of carbohydrates. That's why the language of low carb makes sense, and it should just be carbohydrate appropriate. So it's making those choices. But, to me, living in this society as we all do, one of the most demoralizing things that's happened in the past 12 months was when the reopening phase commenced and a certain burger venue was allowed to reopen. And the fact that, people poured out en masse, that was causing disruption to traffic, that they would sit and wait to consume that type of food. That to me is a symptom of where our society is at and its relationship with food. It's all wrong. It's not a treat. It's not a reward. I don't care what their advertising says. It doesn't contribute positively to our health and well-being. And we're front face. We need to be consistent. We need to send a consistent message, which shouldn't be too extreme, but should endorse and encourage better choices, just better choices. And that's all the person can do, is strive towards improvement, not perfection. So it's just about trying to make positive choices every single day. And you are what you eat. You really are.
And isn't a large part of it that actually just need, generally as a rule of thumb, if you prepare the food yourself from the basics, that's better than buying in the processed food. And so one of the things you'd hope, wouldn't you, that people have been at home a lot more and been unable to go out, is that we have had more time to kind of cook and prepare the food. So I suppose one basic bit of advice for people would be just cook with the ingredients from scratch rather than buy the kind of pre-prepared processed food. Would that be a fair thing to say?
100%. But I always ask people to consider: are you preparing this meal from products or ingredients? So how many packets and how many cans, how many things you're going to open that's going to make it to the pan compared to how many things that you're going to slice or chop?
Yeah.
Think about whether or not it is ingredients or products, because the minute we start to engage with products, we're starting to engage with a level of processing all the way through from low level processing to ultra processed. And depending on the nutritionist you're talking to, and I'm a registered nutritionist with the British Dietetics Association. One of my key roles is to work as a knowledge broker for a huge nutrition company. I'd like to think I can hold my own when it comes to understanding the language of nutrition. ultra processed foods, we know for a fact, are harmful en masse. They're generally harmful. So we've got to look at the fact that in the UK, 56% of the diet is based on it. We need to reduce that. We need to reduce that. We need to reduce our reliance on that and go back to it. So increasing your cooking vocabulary should be a key thing that a person works on. The same way that you would go to the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week, however many times you attend, to look for that level of improvement, you should be looking at opportunities across your week to learn a new recipe, to learn a new food skill, and broaden what you can do to be reliant on ingredients and far less reliant on products.
Yeah, that's really good advice. That's great. We run these sessions for about an hour, so we're sort of coming into the last 5 or 6 minutes. But I did want to just touch on one thing that you again really helped me understand much better when I went through this course, and we probably could do a whole hour on it. But just give people a bit of a heads up on your view on supplements in relation to nutrition. You know, things like vitamin D and those sorts of things, and whether actually we need to supplement our diet or not.
Well, we're in the 21st century now, and there's as much an ecological issue facing our consumption of food as there is a physiological one. Mm-hmm. And certain things, vitamin D is a great example, Dave. So for 20 years, I've been saying to people, throughout the late autumn and winter months, you should take vitamin D. We don't get enough of it from our diet. We don't get enough exposure to the sun. As we get older, we're working against ourselves biologically with regards to our synthesis of it. So simply taking a vitamin D supplement throughout the autumn and winter months, it's just really good practice to do it. And then based on your age or the health factors where you live in the world, your exposure to sun, you might want to take it all year round, low dose, and increase the dose in the winter. There's a question coming about protein, which I'll bring into this now. Other things that we struggle to get sufficient amounts of in our diets just through our dietary behavior that are really bringing about changes in our health consequences are things like the omega-3. So looking at polyunsaturated fatty acids. But there's a whole issue around how we can effectively get them through supplementation. So to me, it's a case of going, well, what's the genuine case of need and what do I expect from the supplement? That's the best question to answer. Vitamin D, for instance, is not going to stop you getting COVID. Vitamin D will help the normal function of your immune system, and that's critical. That is critical. So what we know is that across 96% of the most severe cases of COVID-19, there's been an observed vitamin D deficiency. So it's a no-brainer to me that you just go, we know COVID affects the immune system. When we're looking at immune deficient people, there's this deficiency of vitamin D. So a simple thing to do is to make sure that we're covering that base. So it's kind of like there are simple things like that we can do. And that's where supplements work really, really well. We just don't, our diets have changed radically and we can't pull out enough fish from the sea to give everybody sufficient amounts of omega-3. We can't. And intensive aquaculture means that those fish don't contain as much as we'd need per serving anyway. So I'd encourage people to think of their strategy around that. Okay. And we've got to look at the EPA and DHA types of omega-3, which only come from those marine sources. When it gets to a protein shake, look at your protein intake requirements and ask yourself, does supplementation make your life easier? And if it would, then say, right, what's the best quality one that's most like food? Because some of the supplement industry, when it comes to protein, is some of the worst part of the ultra-processed industry. That said, especially now, and I won't mention any brands, but some have emerged within the last few years that I've actually been quite impressed by, because it's far more food-like. And actually isolating a whey protein is really simple to do. So companies should be able to do it better without putting a load of gump and rubbish in there. And some companies have started to do that, and you will know of them. I'm not going to, you'll know, but look for that. Look for the ingredients and how much of it is from naturally derived sources. And then I encourage everyone, if you're going through kind of any strength or strength endurance phase, to be looking at around about 1.5, 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of your own mass per day. And if that's really difficult to get through your diet, then one of those better protein shakes can cover that. Meal replacements, that to me, it's too much like a strategy that's a dietary intervention. And I like dietary changes that are sustainable. I like to say, can I do this for the rest of my life? And if I can't answer yes, I'm kind of saying, well, then there must be a better way of doing it. And so to me, you've really got to look at the circumstances. But where a meal replacement can come into its own is in those early stages, those first 4 to 5 to 6 months of helping somebody to facilitate some meaningful, sustainable weight loss. So you can start to understand how food can be laid out across a day. So it can be, not to want to contradict myself, it can be a short-term strategy, but I would say only under the proviso that you're working with that person on a longer-term, sustainable dietary behavior that goes beyond it, and that they know that this is just to achieve a certain outcome whilst we bring about and consolidate those other changes. The hardest part about nutrition isn't knowing the right stuff, it's doing the right stuff. Humans are funny. I've been working with humans my whole life. They are funny, fascinating creatures. Genuinely, 9 out of 10 say don't touch the fire because it's hot and put the hand in. Funny. We're a funny crew. We really are. But it's got us a long way, hasn't it? But it's facilitating that change of behavior. And simple things like saying you can't be tempted by that chocolate biscuit if it's not in the cupboard. So don't put it in the trolley and don't take it through the checkout. Makes sense, doesn't it? But then a person goes into their local supermarket and goes down that aisle and sees that and just in case. And then so it's managing all that stuff. It's hard. It's difficult.
And it's the whole idea about convenience foods, because actually quite often it's just as quick to prepare something yourself from scratch. It takes very little extra work than it is to kind of get the convenience food, and you've got to make sure you store it properly, and then it's that whole thing. It's actually not that much. That's not that difficult and that time consuming to cook something healthy. Sorry, Lisa, you were going to say?
Batch cook.
Yeah, batch cook. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah, so that's one of the things that you do. You batch cook, and then that's a great idea. Great idea.
And also, convenience is the biggest lie of the 20th century. It really is. Everyone was told they had no time and was sold this notion of convenience. You didn't have any time and you were too important. It's just a complete lie. And secondly, it's just as convenient to reach into the cupboard and get a palm full of almonds, walnuts, and cashews and have a little munch on them when you feel a bit snacky, as it is to grab the chocolate buttons. It's just a change of gear and start to think, what is this giving me? And remember, folks, the one person you can never cheat is yourself. Having worked in pro sport, cheating comes about when I'm doing something to outdo the person next to me. When I eat, my way through a tub of Ben & Jerry's, I can't possibly cheat myself. It's not a cheat day, and also don't elevate the status of food by calling it a reward. It's kind of like saying to yourself, there's mental rehearsal that says, I'm going to tolerate all this fresh stuff and this good stuff so that I can reward myself with all this awful stuff. And remember, refined sugars bring about systemic inflammation, directly, correlated to most chronic disease. It's not a reward. It's not a reward at all. We've just been bought in by marketing. So change the terms of it. And I know people like bits and bobs, probably more than me. Bring all your measurements down and keep reducing them down. When you've halved it again, halve it again. Reduce your reliance on it. And I promise everyone, you'll start to get addicted to feeling good. You'll feel better and well. You'll deal with less instances of general aches and pains, colds, flus, all that typical seasonal stuff. You will be in a better state. Promise you.
Yeah. That's a brilliant point about how don't treat the treats as treats. They're not rewards. That's a really clever mind shift. I've got one last question that I just want to squeeze in, because we've got a lot of people on here from Shrewsbury, and some of the comments that I've heard. I spend a bit of my time in Shrewsbury. Is particularly I think in relation to, you probably picked up on the news that the Shrewsbury Town Football Club manager Steve Cottrell got COVID, has been in hospital, and he's been taken back into hospital. And he was renowned for having really high levels of fitness. I mean, he really looked after himself. He's in his mid-50s, but he exercised to a really high level. And clearly that's part, we've all got our COVID-19 stories that unnerve us a little bit. So is there a danger? Can we over exercise? Can we do too much exercise that actually becomes detrimental to our health, and particularly in relation to COVID-19, Col?
In a nutshell, mindful of time, yes. And this is the caution I have before COVID-19, by the way, but I've ramped up on talking about it since COVID-19. There is a point at which health and fitness separate, and the adjunct doesn't work anymore. And most of what you do should be invested in your health, and then do little bits of clever work that invest in your fitness. And I know, believe me, I love to be in the arena to this day. I'm 48 and I love to be in the arena and still have a go and do stuff. But you've got to do it on different terms, and you've also got to do it at the point at which that you never lose touch with that basis of health. And whenever we're working sustainably at upper limits, we are running the risk and the gauntlet. Okay, most of what we should do should be moderate. It should be within our scope of comfort, and then every now and then do those sessions that ask a few more questions and push a little bit. It shouldn't be the case that we're always pushing and every now and then we back off. This people often misinterpret the word deload. It's not about that. Most of what we do should be in that zone, and then we push up every now and then. And that's why early doors we had loads of these stories, sadly some related to mortalities, saying even rarely fit people are getting COVID-19. Well, that's a given anyway. The more worrying bit was the mortalities and the severity of the symptoms amongst the rarely fit people. And it's an issue that we're picking up with in elite and pro sport. Believe me, it's had quite an impact. So to me, focus your efforts on your health and then add fitness on top, and never the other way around. Prioritize your health, because when you're at that level of fitness, that comes at a systemic cost. You can only maintain it for a short period of time. When you're in the hands of people like me, and we've got other S&C coaches and other physiologists and physios and everyone around you as a team, we manage that so that you peak at the time that corresponds to your competition, and then we manage you back down. So it's done to keep you as safe and well as possible, because we know there's a risk, but the reward is worth the risk. So the Olympics every 4 years, to medal at the Olympics is the pinnacle of human performance of sport. The reward is worth the risk. But I promise you, for 3 years and 6.5 months, most of what's done is within that individual's capacity, with those strategically tougher sessions in there to elicit the response required. And the problem we see across our general gym goers when they go after fitness is 90% of what they do is fitness, and very little of it correlates towards their health. We've got to change that balance back round.
And that's where coming into a gym and having instructors that can help and guide you on that plays a big part, which kind of, I think, is a neat way to draw this to a close. We've gone one over the hour with loads of people that are still joining in, and it's fascinating listening to you, Col. I've really appreciated your input, and thanks so much. So yeah, I'm just gonna let Lisa. So Lisa, I know you're looking forward to getting back to Holman. You've got a message for your members. I know they've been keen to see you, and I'm sure they're also looking forward to seeing you. You've got a message for the Holman members.
Missing you all, and I'll see you soon.
Excellent, great stuff. We'll be bringing that information in. And Col, those people that have enjoyed it, we are going to be chatting again 3 weeks tonight on the 24th. So thank you so much. That's going to be far more about talking about the impact of COVID has and people that have got long COVID, and how exercise can play a part in the recovery. And I know there's lots of people already that have been asking me about that. So I'm sure we're going to have lots of people dialed in for that. Those of you that have got children and kind of like you're counting down till next Monday when they go back to school, we've got a session on tomorrow night. Actually, we normally do these once a week, but we had to put last week's one back to this week. So we've got an extra session tomorrow night. So I'll be here again at 7 o'clock talking about how we help our kids get used to going back to school, and how we can help them through the fact that they've had homeschooling for such a big part of the last year. So I've got 5 teachers joining me from Ellesmere College, which is a great school in Shropshire that we work with. And so yeah, if you're free tomorrow night, I'd love for you to join in again, because we'll be talking about about homeschooling and getting people back. Thanks so much for all the comments coming in from everybody who seems to have enjoyed what you've had to say, Col. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll look forward to catching up with you in 3 weeks. But for everybody else, yeah, we'll see you again soon, and thanks very much for joining in tonight.